Make up mine. Fight.
I feel like something Team Fortress 2 doesn't get enough credit for is its weapon designs. And I don't mean their mechanical functional designs, there's enough discussion about that to fill its own New Age Library of Alexandria. I mean their visual designs. TF2 has a lot of incredibly creative, well-realized designs and concepts for guns in a first-person shooter, and I think that goes a long way in bolstering its comedic appeal and staying power. So in this video, I want to discuss my favorite weapon aesthetics in TF2. I want to note a few rules and addendums before we begin here though, just to weed out some potentially repetitive comments. Number 1, this is all just my opinion. I realize that's a pretty common YouTuber thing to say, but I really can't stress how subjective this video really is. For example, I don't care one bit about real-world historical firearms, or any given TF2 weapon's resemblance to them. You're not going to hear me talk about how Demo Man's lock and load is actually a really clever reference to the MP69 long-cock grenade launcher from 1939 Germany or whatever. I respect stuff like this, but it's nowhere near my field of interest or specialty. If that's what you like about a certain TF2 weapon, sound off in the comments or make your own video. This is all just one uneducated schmuck with a microphone's opinions on guns in a very old game. Secondly, we're going to be omitting reskins, Australiums, festives, and war paints from this discussion, as they're kind of manufactured by design to be aesthetically appealing, and it would feel like cheating to include them. If you're curious, my favorite Australium is the black box, my favorite festive is the Islander, and my favorite skin is Macabre Web. All that said, let's discuss every TF2 weapon that tickles my brain wrinkles to look at. Let's roll. Starting us off is Scout Sodas, the Bonk Atomic Punch and the Criticola. Not only do these two have very iconic retro marketing inspired designs that feel right at home in TF2's intended time period, but the textures for the cans themselves also feature a ton of details and hidden in-universe information about the soda Scout's been drinking. For instance, did you know that their primary ingredients are water, sugar, and radiation, or that they contain enough sugar to kill multiple people multiple times over? Fascinating stuff. Additionally, I really like the Rap Assassin. This is a genius idea for a weapon, playing on that childhood nostalgia of becoming a Jedi Master using a discarded tube of wrapping paper. Its texture is also really glossy and colorful in a very appealing way, and I love its hit sound. I remember reading a YouTube comment a decade or so ago that suggested the way they recorded this was by having Gabe Newell himself run around Valve headquarters hitting people with a cardboard tube. And while that obviously isn't true, it is an image I've never been able to get out of my head, and is something I think about every time I hit someone with this weapon. For Soldier, I want to start off with the original. I know I mentioned at the top of this video that I don't care about historical weaponry, but I didn't say anything about video game history. The fact that the original is such a succinct and layered homage to Quake, one of the games that would most directly inspire TF2, is really cool to see, and the extent of the team's dedication to delivering on that homage is staggering. From the model, to the view model position, to the sounds, this weapon really is a loving tribute to the type of game that TF2 wouldn't exist without. Funny that TF2 itself probably could classify as a boomer shooter on its own these days though, huh? I also want to talk about the Liberty Launcher, a weapon that I don't think too many people have on their minds really ever, but it's hiding a clever secret. If you look right at the center of this gun, you might notice a cracked bell-shaped section of its barrel. And if you look at it removed from the rest of the gun, you'll notice that it's the Liberty Bell. Oh my god, that's so cool. Even as someone who doesn't care about history, this is such a well-executed and cheeky Easter egg hidden within the weapon's design that perfectly fits its theming and name that I just had to include it. Moving on to Pyro, I want to talk about the flare gun. This is straight up probably my single favorite weapon aesthetic in the game, and it's entirely because it activates my 8-brain impulses. I see shiny, I clap. Seriously though, the flare gun has such an immediately satisfying texture. It's this glossy, plasticky, reflective sheen that light just slides off of, and you know has the best texture in the game to actually hold. This thing is my TF2 equivalent to those satisfying to watch brain rot videos you see all the time. It just makes me happy. Next up is the Power Jack, and this one's really funny because I feel like a lot of people don't realize just what this thing actually is. A lot of us tend to internalize it as just a big industrial hammer or mallet, but make no mistake, this is an automobile jack with a car battery strapped to the end of it. And when you consider that a car jack weighs about... and that a car battery weighs about... yeah, Pyro definitely lifts. This one is just such a funny and extra design for me that I knew I had to include it. Your brain is mush if you're on the receiving end of this thing. Another Pyro melee I want to talk about is the sharpened volcano fragment. And listen, I know this weapon is really bad, but I cannot deny my 8-brain on this one. This weapon looks really badass. It's just a big, jagged chunk of flaming obsidian with a handle and a bunch of lava coursing through it. It's like the embodiment of every edgelord D&D player's deepest player character fantasies brought to life in an FPS game. I get that it's a bit tacky, but I just love how this thing looks. One last Pyro melee I want to talk about is the Neon Annihilator. This one was pretty easy to nail down. The neon vaporwave aesthetic is like an entire subgenre of visuals all on its own. And the fact that this weapon was clearly torn out of the ground in universe while still running is both a funny comedic detail and a great way to articulate its intended function. Also, this is one of very few melee weapons in the game that physically breaks upon a successful crit swing, which is something that typically only Demo Man can say about his melees. Demo Man only has one weapon I want to talk about, and it's the half Zatoichi. I know, it's a katana, which means it's Japanese, which makes it bad and cringe for some reason, I guess. But I really cannot deny how cool this thing is. Not only is its base design really unique within TF2, but it also has the distinctions of becoming covered with blood on a successful kill, and having its name be directly tied into its design. Its name references Zatoichi, a legendary blind swordsman in Japanese culture, so giving it to Demo Man, a class who's literally half blind, and Soldier, a class whose eyes are half covered, is a really funny commitment to the bit in my opinion. All around, an honorable weapon. Moving on to Heavy, he's only got two items I want to talk about, and both of them are food. First up is the sandwich, which is such a good design and concept. Not only is the idea of giving the game's literal tank a sandwich that he very much relishes in eating as a self-sustain method incredibly funny, but it also just looks really appetizing. Like, that's a pristine sandwich. Every component so delicately sized and portioned and... Oh, sorry. Did I mention I'm fat? Either way, it's no wonder that the sandwich became such an iconic staple TF2 weapon. On the flip side, we have the Dolichos bar, a weapon I like less in game, yet like visually for similar reasons to both the sandwich and the flare gun. This is a pristine chocolate bar, so shiny and reflective while somehow not melting and maintaining its shape in the hot Badlands sun. If I could hold any TF2 weapon in real life, it'd definitely be the Dolichos bar. I wish my local convenience store carried chocolate bars with 8 sections the size of my hand that perfectly held their shape no matter the circumstances. Also, it's a small detail, but I love the little TF2 logo imprints on each section. Very cute detail. Hey, would you look at that? It's the whole reason I wanted to make this video. Medic's quick fix is such a brilliant weapon design aesthetically that I'm surprised more people don't talk about it. In game, it's designed to facilitate fast healing with less overheal and no invulnerability as a quick fix alternative to the other mediguns, and its design matches. It's clearly a slapdashed and modified blender, hastily put together, complete with a bird poop stain. It really articulates its role as the fast, short-term results devil with no care medigun, and is one of the most cohesive visual and gameplay designs in the game to me. And on a completely different note, the solemn vow is very funny. I really like the idea of Medic having such a thorough disrespect for medical ethics that he's okay with hitting people with a bust of the father of modern medicine, complete with do no harm being printed right there as he's killing people with it. Plus, this is a weirdly visceral and satisfying weapon to just clunk someone with. I really like that this is Medic's only unique unlockable melee that doesn't use his typical swing animation. Lastly, I've seen at least one person say that they thought this weapon's description meant it did no damage, and that's just very funny to me. Moving on to Sniper, I want to single out the Hitman's Heatmaker as my first choice for him. This is another weapon that I don't feel the general player base tends to think about that often, but I think its design is unironically really cool. From its truncated, compact, sleek build to its built-in suppressor and fittingly suppressed firing sound, this is a gun that masterfully slides into its role as Sniper's de facto Hitman sniper rifle, and is all around very aesthetically satisfying to use, complete with popping enemies' heads on a successful kill. Sniper is always an assassin to some extent, but this weapon really sells his polite professional shtick effectively. And the reason I call it his polite professional shtick specifically is the Jarate. I talked a lot about this weapon's concept and design in the stock replacement weapons video, but I really want to re-stress that the introduction of Jarate in 2009 is when TF2 really became TF2. When they added a literal jar of human piss as a weapon to what was then only a 2-year-old game is when TF2's true sensibilities were put on full display. This game was irreverent, large, and in charge, and was here to stay, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It's such an iconic game-defining idea for a weapon, and one that really only TF2 would realistically go for. Can you imagine Overwatch having something like this? All in all, funny. And lastly is Spy, and would you believe the class who canonically cares the most about his appearance has some really cool looking weapons? Let's start with the Ambassador. Now I know this thing lacks a lot of mechanical detail in terms of its actual function as a gun, but I really don't care about that and just think it looks really cool. It's a 50 cal with a rosewood grip and an engraving of a woman on the barrel, assumedly the wife of someone Spy is killed. It also has a really meaty firing sound to fit its role as Spy's de facto big damage revolver. If you had to use one weapon and no words to articulate the Spy's character to someone who's never played TF2, the Ambassador would be an easy #1 choice. Next up is the Conniver's Kunai, and I really don't feel like I should have to explain this one. It's a kunai, which are historically one of the most badass weapons ever conceived by man. I am aware that the way they're broadly portrayed in fiction isn't at all representative of their actual history, but that also goes for ninjas as a whole, and concerned it, sometimes I just want to backstab someone with a historically inaccurate ninja weapon. Also, I'm sure y'all are expecting me to apologize for everything I said about this weapon in the past, but
hello, but I'm not sorry.
All in all, the kunai is just an immediately cool and enticing concept for a weapon, and one that I really wish was on a weapon that wasn't so controversial. And as our last weapon for this video, I want to discuss the Spycicle. Now, this weapon is cut from a very similar ideological cloth to the Rap Assassin, playing off of a classic childhood ideal, but in this case, it's the fear of having a jagged icicle fall off of your roof and impale you. When I first saw this weapon, I thought it was a shard of glass, and was immediately struck by its concept when I learned what it actually was. This is what I mean when I say TF2 is great at conceptualizing fun weapons and realizing those concepts. How many other games would have something like this? The Spycicle, fitting for its icy design, is very cool.
For a little bit too.
And there we have it, my favorite weapon aesthetics in TF2. I really want to stress again just how impressed I am with TF2's ability to come up with immediately enticing, unique, game-defining weapon ideas, and then fully realize them on a gameplay and execution level. There are so many weapons in this game that are absolutely game-defining. Some of the first things people think about when they think Team Fortress 2, and concepts that no other game would be anywhere near brave enough to attempt. TF2 really is a brilliant game on a concept and design level, and one that I feel like we should give more credit for its visuals and aesthetics in that regard. Either way, thanks, hope y'all had a fantastic day before, during, and after watching, and I'll catch you all later. Cheers!